Welcome to the chaos sector. We return to the Matrix. Boy, I tell ya, I bet the prosecution and Moscow PD, heck, even the dreaded FBI, wish those incident reports weren't unsealed. Yeah, they can say the scapegoat went down for it, but the truth will seep out of the crevices. Some have pretty much concluded that Kohlberger was a federal operative. It's possible. We doodled with that theory, if anyone remembered early. We even pondered if he was the DoorDash driver. This episode is going to be a bit difficult due to what we have examined in the unsealed police reports. There's a lot, and surely others have already examined them over the last month or so. But I want to address the drug use that peers of the victims claim they used. Katie told Officer Rowinski that Kaylee probably did cocaine and that she knew for a fact, yes, she knew that Xana was into it. Another peer stated that Xana and Ethan were into it. This is very revealing information because although it doesn't make them bad people, we have to look at where they got the cocaine and who they were associated with. Bonnie and Clyde were the pushers in town. This is a fact. So let's establish this pair as being the direct plug to the college students. You don't have to use cocaine to know that it's an expensive drug. In fact, it's arguably the most expensive drug. All of the rich Hollywood celebrities use it, musicians, athletes, anyone who can consistently afford the habit. First, we have to think about the setting in the home now since Katie spilled the beans. You have Ashlyn Couch, who previously stayed there. She moved out. You have Kaylee, who stayed in a home with her best friend, yet was a senior who was graduating and was from a different sorority. You have Madison, Xana, and Bethany, who were in the same sorority, with Dylan, who had apparently been recently initiated. You have Ethan, who didn't stay there officially, but essentially was a roommate. You have Hunter, who also didn't stay there, but was there just as much, or even more. Now, this is the household setting where parties took place frequently. Typical college fun, right? But a party house where drugs were used at parties and housemates also used drugs, well, we have to focus on the element of danger. With all due respect to the victims, our analysis is based on the information provided. Have to reiterate this point due to sensitivity issues. Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were allegedly cocaine users, while Madison apparently didn't use it. You have 3 out of the 4 victims who were cocaine users, with Madison being the 4th, and the surviving housemates, well, they survived. Off this alone, knowing that Bonnie and Clyde were drug pushers in town, isn't a drug-related motive the most logical theory? Of course. Now, early on, there was a claim that someone flushed a large amount of drugs down the toilet. Would have to go back and find the exact amount that was allegedly flushed, but I think it was close to the $100,000 worth range. This was deemed speculation early on, but now that Katie has revealed housemates used cocaine, it sure looks a bit more believable now, doesn't it? And this would be the reason those housemates were taken out, because of that action, which is a fatal action when you're messing with a criminal organization's profit. Some speculated that there was an underground fight club where Ethan and Xana participated, trying to make money and pay off their debt. Possible. The claim that some of the females had OnlyFans, again, trying to make money to pay off the debt. This is not slander. This is looking into the reality of what those housemates were facing, a fatal consequence for their actions, which led them to attempt to do whatever it took to show their willingness to correct their mistake. It's certainly possible. Heck, maybe the guy who was snooping around was keeping an eye on him, letting him know, hey, you have a deadline, don't forget. Now, we're going to get right into it.
This report is from Detective Deane. Quote, on November 21, 2022, at approximately 11:57 hours, I was asked by Captain Tyson Barrett to follow up on a possible lead in the 1122 King Road homicide. I was told that a Mexican drug dealer with the moniker was possibly selling drugs to several fraternities and sororities on the University of Idaho campus. Okay, let's stop right here. There is a lead, and if there is a lead, then there is a source who has information from within that college circle. Keep this in mind. I told Captain Barrett that I would contact several of my contacts to see if anyone knew of. At approximately 12:04 hours, I began contacting my fellow Quad Cities Drug Task Force detectives, Brett Damon, Colby Martin, and Bryson Aussie. None of the detectives had heard of selling cocaine in the Quad Cities. At approximately 12:11 hours, I reached out to ATF and spoke to TJ Waihara out of Spokane, Washington, and referenced Waihara hadn't heard of but said he would reach out to other agencies in the area about him. Okay, so this individual obviously has an alias, and that alias, in our opinion, is perhaps fictitious. In addition, it's quite ironic that Detective Deane is contacting an ATF agent in Spokane, Washington. Clyde's brother resides there. Let's continue. I also spoke to at approximately 13:13 hours and at approximately 17:25 hours. Said they never heard of a selling cocaine in the area. Said that he would contact me if he heard anything. I also spoke with Brandon DeMeyer with Benton County Sheriff's Office in Washington at approximately 16:25 hours. Deputy DeMeyers hadn't heard of but said he would contact his local detectives about the name and let me know if he found out anything, unquote. Now, we would focus on the lead, but we think this is a fictitious person, and it's common with drug operations. Throw law enforcement off for a while, searching for someone who doesn't exist, delaying an investigation. So whoever the lead was may have provided a fake person to law enforcement to protect the real criminals. Detectives suspected it was related to drugs due to there being multiple victims and 2 surviving housemates. Yet it's also possible that someone did in fact leak out a few tips here and there related to drugs. It's difficult to ignore this glaring information about those housemates. It's not speculation. It's not some Reddit post that hasn't been confirmed. It's Katie claiming that some of those housemates did drugs. WSU Kim claimed that there was a stick-up that night that went horribly wrong. She's not trustworthy, but surely she has the inside scoop. Come to think about it, let's touch on her claims again while we're at it. WSU Kim claimed that the fraternities and sororities were involved, and it's bigger than Moscow, bigger than what the local law enforcement can handle. Later Sunday, WSU Kim had called the FBI. Now, what did she tell the FBI? Keep in mind, this is before, I repeat, before she was yapping about Kohberger being the killer. So, what did she inform the FBI about prior to Kohberger being identified as the killer? Was it about drugs? Was it about her belief that it was a, quote, shakedown that went horribly wrong? Does she know of this Mexican drug dealer who sold drugs on campus? What about Dot's claim, which was allegedly the claims of an actual neighbor who saw Dylan, Bonnie, Clyde, and 2 other males early Sunday morning on the porch smoking marijuana? If it's drug-related, that claim seems highly likely. The audio, which was deemed fake, has a male on the phone talking to Bonnie, telling her to hurry and get over there, as attacks were heard in the background. In the Linda Lane audio, there's a female who yells out OMG as if she witnessed something horrific. This is also the time frame that Ethan's name was heard, which was around 2:20 a.m. Ethan's mother claimed 2 a.m. is a dark hour. Xana and Ethan apparently hadn't got home yet until after everyone came back, but the earlier reports have them arriving back around 1:45 a.m. And then there's more. Xana's father had spoken to her around 12 a.m., and they were at home eating pizza. The inconsistency surrounding their whereabouts seemed to be linked to that 2:20 a.m. activity, where a physical altercation is heard. It was alleged that Ethan had gotten into a fight with one of his frat brothers. And yes, what about the theory that someone flushed drugs down the toilet, which was definitely a major loss for the drug organization? This seems logical now that we actually have a college peer, among others, who claim that some of those housemates did cocaine. Heck, we can even suggest that some of them may have sold cocaine out of that home for Bonnie and Clyde. We mentioned this early on. You let us set up operations in the home, we pay you for it, and you can even make extra money if you help us push the drugs in the neighborhood. There's a lot to tie to Katie's claim, and it just adds more context to the drug-related motive most have assumed was the cause. Obviously, there was an insider who leaked out information early on, anonymously, of course. But all of that information, theory, speculations, has even more believability now that Katie had revealed a truth about those housemates. Keep in mind, Katie claimed she texted Kaylee around 10 a.m. Sunday morning wondering if she was okay, but she never mentioned that she couldn't get in touch with her prior that prompted her to have a concern. So obviously, Katie knew that Kaylee had been attacked. Of course, because the news had spread as early as 8 to 9 a.m. based on another student's claims. But we know it spread in the wee hours because Dylan and Bethany were on Snapchat as early as 4:27 a.m. This is very early to be on a social media site, don't you think? Unless they were sharing information about the murders, which is encrypted. And then there's more. It was alleged that they were asleep overnight, but they weren't asleep. So Katie knew that Kaylee had been attacked and murdered because Dylan and Bethany had spread the news confidentially throughout the circle of peers. And they also knew why. Yes, knew why those housemates were murdered. We're definitely focused on this, but let's address Showalter. Many feel he was one of the killers. Some think he was the lookout, and others think he was just a big brother to the girls that night. Well, I find his witness accounts quite revealing. Now we're going to focus on a specific segment of the officer report, an officer named David Hathaway. Quote, at about 22:46 hours, I talked to Showalter on the phone. Showalter essentially said the same thing he said in the voicemail he left. Showalter said that he was out with Maddie at the corner club until about 02:30 hours. Showalter said several times that he did not know who the, quote, other girl was that was with them that night. Showalter described the girls getting into a silver sedan after they got food at the grub truck, unquote. So that's enough. First off, kind of hard to believe that Showalter didn't know Kaylee, and they're practically joined at the hip. I mean, really, it's possible, I guess, but he described her as the, quote, other girl. Surely he knew her name. It's a bit suspicious, but he goes on to describe the vehicle that picked him up from the grub truck being a silver sedan. Now, why is this interesting? Well, let's take a look at one of Brett Payne's reports.
Quote, and approximately 1700 hours on 11/24/22, I took the MPD school car, a silver Ford Fusion, and drove the route of the suspect vehicle. I drove two separate routes in front of the camera located at Ridge Road, once westbound on Louder Avenue, and then twice on Ridge Road, southbound and northbound. I advised the command post of the times of these runs and requested the video from the point of contact at Ridge Road in order to compare the color of the test vehicle to that of the suspect vehicle. Once I completed these runs, I drove to 1122 King Road and walked the route MM stated she took while on foot near the house on 11/13/22. I also parked the MPD school car on Queen Road immediately to the east of 1122 King Road in order to observe the effects of the orange-tinted streetlights located in the area. The lights appeared to make the silver vehicle look tanner in color than it would under white streetlights. Now let's stop right here. What do you guys think? I believe it was around 2:50 a.m. when the unmarked cruiser arrived near Bandfield. That would be the silver Ford Fusion, but its nickname a school car. Now, it appears that the nickname just means officers just drive around making sure college students aren't causing trouble. But is it possible that they provided rides to students as well? Showalter stated the girls were picked up by a silver sedan. Payne drove the unmarked cruiser, nicknamed the school car, which was a silver Ford Fusion. Is this a coincidence, or is this how the coat Madison was wearing ended up on Taylor Avenue? Keep in mind, there is conflicting reports of who the private driver was. Ah yes, we will never let this slide. Eric Gower is depicted as the private driver on one hand, then you have Batman, who is interviewed by Law and Crime. Not the same person, one is from Idaho and works at the university, while the other is from Pullman and is retired.
Interesting, because based on our review of Officer Mowry's report, Eric Gower was allegedly off-duty when he drove the girls back home. So around 1:15 a.m., he was off-duty. Quote, in a screenshot received from Olivia Gonzalez, yes, that's who we think that is, it showed messages which appeared to be from Gower's phone between Kaylee Gonzalez and himself. The name of the recipient is Kaylee Uber. It is unknown if Gower was on duty with Uber at the time of him picking up Gonzalez and Maddie Mogan. Uber stated if the driver was on duty, it would show the location of the vehicle. If the driver was not on duty, Uber would not have the data. I was informed by Uber customer service this is common if the driver provides personal transportation services. At 14:34 hours, I received an email from Uber stating they received my request. I received an email at approximately 16:17 hours from Uber, which contained files regarding the Uber logs of Eric Gower. The record showed his location up until approximately 0115 hours, where it appears no other information is found and Gower goes off duty, unquote. Now, we don't trust this report, meaning until someone can show us documentation that proves Eric Gower was in fact an Uber driver, we won't accept the claim. But it states that Gower had gone offline around 1:15 a.m. Okay, let's go back a bit. If anyone recalls, Moscow PD had claimed Kaylee and Madison arrived back around 1:45 a.m. Olivia then publicly scolded them, claiming they had the time incorrect, and it's important to get the facts straight, blah, blah, blah. But where do you think they got that time from? It would be the alleged Eric Gower, so he was the one that provided the incorrect time. Now think about this. The alleged Eric Gower goes off duty around 1:15 a.m. Kaylee and Madison are still at the grub truck at this point. Around 1:45 a.m., yes, 1:45 a.m., they are picked up. Are we to believe that Eric Gower, who is the alleged private driver, wouldn't know the time that he picked up Kaylee and Madison and when they were dropped off? Surely he would know that he picked them up around 1:45 a.m. and would perhaps approximate when he dropped them off. In other words, he would not confuse the pickup time with the drop-off time. So what do we make of this? Eric Gower was not the Uber driver, which explains the confusion of when the girls were picked up and dropped off. In addition, we haven't come across an interview in these police reports with Eric Gower. But notice, Olivia didn't scold him. He was the source of that time. After Olivia corrected the time based on viewing the neighbor's security footage, the reports updated the time to 1:56 a.m. We all seen the screenshot timed at 1:56 a.m., yet no silver sedan is spotted in that screenshot turning onto Queen Road. The point here, if Olivia was making sure the time of their arrival was around 2 a.m., then why wasn't this ever seen? We don't see any activity in that neighborhood prior to the time frame the alleged Koberger had arrived. Wouldn't it have been important to show the arrival time of Kaylee and Madison? I mean, they released all of the other surveillance footage of them. You had the corner club footage released. You had the grub truck footage released. And yet somehow their arrival back to their residence where they were murdered is not released. I think they didn't release it because the vehicle that dropped them off, allegedly, which was a silver sedan, is the Ford Fusion, nicknamed the school car. I mean, come on, a school car. In addition, it's also possible that the reason that time frame and surveillance hasn't been released is because maybe the vehicle, this same silver sedan had drove into the neighborhood. Yes, that same Ford Fusion, which was parked on Taylor Avenue and their body cam footage was previously driving around near the victim's neighborhood. Yep.
Batman, who was interviewed by Law and Crime, claimed to be the private driver. This is a major problem. It's a major problem because this individual is from Pullman, Washington, claiming to stay 1,200 feet from Koberger's doorstep, claimed to be retired with a wife and a dog. Eric Gower is from Idaho, has always lived in the state of Idaho, did provide university transportation while being a community outreach coordinator, is married with a child, but had been promoted to lead director in the program. Mind you, Batman claimed to know the girls, was familiar with the neighborhood, knew where they worked, and provided services for them on many occasions. Eric Gower apparently has never been interviewed by Moscow PD, providing these details. In the affidavit, yes, it states he was interviewed, but based on our brief scan of the unsealed documents, we haven't come across an interview with Eric Gower to this point. Maybe it's somewhere in the files we obtained, yet something tells me it's not there. And this is what causes problems. Put it this way, for those who believe it was Eric Gower from Idaho, why would Batman claim to be the driver that night if he wasn't? It would be Gower, right?
So who the hell had been interviewed by Law and Crime pretending to be the driver and claiming to know personal details about the victims? Let that ponder for a moment.
You know what? I think I figured out why Eric Gower is depicted as the private driver. Ah, yes, his wife works for the department covered up the murders. Let's make him the private driver. Yup, that was easy, and everyone will be convinced he was the private driver. But they slipped up. Might have to go back and find out which one came first. Batman's interview with Law and Crime or the affidavit identifying Eric Gower. And sure enough, detectives were snooping around in that area, quite far from the crime scene. Now, here's the thing. You had mainstream media questioning if a scream was heard in the Banfield body cam. It's up for debate if it was a scream or not. But this was around the same time, which was about 3:12 a.m., that group of individuals were running away from that direction. You had Murphy howling at 3:06 a.m., then a scream is heard at 3:12 a.m., then a group is spotted running away from the neighborhood. There's no doubt that they were in a rush. If it was in fact a scream, then you would also have to factor in that group running away from the home, which would more than likely be from the home. In fact, since there was a small get-together, according to Dylan and Bethany, did those individuals run out of the home once the suspects entered and started attacking? I wouldn't blame them. Get the hell out of there. We just wanted to have a good time. But Payne, boy, he really had some nuggets in his reports, yet as we know, it went nowhere. Mentioning how the silver vehicle appeared tan in surveillance. Would a white vehicle have a similar color? Payne claimed that he traveled the same route as the alleged suspect, so on the 24th, they had already tracked the vehicle's path, of course. Yet we do have an issue. If anyone recalls, we pointed out that there is a police station on Southview Avenue, and for the alleged suspect's vehicle to be spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, it would have to be coming from the east, right? Now let's think about this for a moment. Let's do one better and revisit the path.
Now let's clarify something first. Based on body cam footage, the unmarked cruiser was downtown, wasting time with Charlie Brown and his sidekick about stealing a sign. This was around 3:30 a.m., so we can say that the unmarked cruiser was not the vehicle driving around, at least at face value, considering times were altered and readjusted. Showalter stated the girls were picked up by a silver sedan, and Moscow PD was driving a, quote, school car the night of the murders, which was also a silver sedan. We don't know exactly when they arrived in the neighborhood. Could have been around 2 a.m. when the girls were dropped off and then just stuck around pretending to give citations. Yep. But the problem still remains. There is a path that is traveling westbound, which needs to be clarified where the vehicle is actually coming from. To be traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, it's coming from only two possible locations. Either it's traveling from Southview Avenue, then onto Alice Street, then travels westbound on Indian Hills Drive. The streets in that residential area only have a few that connect to the main streets. Yet, if it's traveling from Southview Avenue, then it would have traveled on the highway to get to Southview Avenue. There is a traffic camera at the intersection of Palouse River Drive and Highway 95, so the vehicle either traveled north to Southview Avenue or south. Nevertheless, the vehicle then turns onto Southview Avenue, which turns into Alice Street. It loops around and intersects with Indian Hills Drive. Keep in mind, the alleged path Kohberger traveled included Indian Hills Drive. Now, the other possible path includes another vehicle that would have a more direct and logical path to Indian Hills Drive traveling westbound. And that, my friends, would be the vehicle spotted by the gas station surveillance. This vehicle was traveling westbound on White Avenue. It's coming from the east, and the intersection of White Avenue and Blaine Street is where it passes. Blaine Street, or South Blaine Street, connects to, that's right, Indian Hills Drive. Like the additional 3 males' DNA discovered at the crime scene, this vehicle is still a mystery. Initially considered a potential suspect, then ruled out, yet the vehicle was speeding down the road at 3:45 a.m. around the time frame the murders had taken place. If this was Kohberger's vehicle, it definitely would have been revealed. Yet the actual surveillance footage from that gas station has never, I repeat, has never been released. What is the point here? It's simple. This vehicle is the vehicle spotted driving on Indian Hills, on Ridge Road, and everywhere else they claim Kohberger was traveling. The time matches up. Oh yes, it is the vehicle spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive. What we have here is a bunch of misdirection. Mind you, all of those videos of allegedly Kohberger driving around do not show origin point. For example, if Kohberger was traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, he's traveling from eastbound. As we pointed out, where exactly is he coming from? Come on now. A white vehicle is speeding down White Avenue at 3:45 a.m., traveling westbound in the same direction the alleged Kohberger was traveling in the vicinity of the same street he allegedly traveled on being Indian Hills Drive. If anyone would assume it's Kohberger's vehicle on White Avenue, well, why hasn't that surveillance been released? But let's get back to the theory my colleague posed about the silver sedan. It is definitely logical that Moscow PD used the husband of one of their own employees as the private driver to protect one of their own, being the unmarked cruiser who dropped Kaylee and Madison off. The same vehicle type, same color, and both were in the neighborhood. We need the security footage from the neighbor's camera around the time Kaylee and Madison arrived back home. Yes, and they intentionally released the time frame of when the alleged Kohberger had arrived in the neighborhood. What about 1:45 a.m.? What about 2 a.m.? What about 3 a.m.? They had no problem releasing all of the footage from Linda Lane. Release everything. They can't, because the silver sedan is the unmarked cruiser. I mean, it's nicknamed a fucking school car. Sounds like an Uber service for college students to me. What if it was revealed that Moscow PD had taken Kaylee and Madison home? That would look a bit suspicious, especially with Dylan calling them. Oh no, think about it.
Maybe Officer Tesdall may know a little something about it. Quote, on November 12th, 2022, at about 2100 hours, I began an overtime shift for a plainclothes detail on the University of Idaho campus and related areas. This patrol was for minors in possession/consumption of alcohol along with other alcohol drug offenses. During this patrol, I and the other officer with me, Officer Rosendahl, only had our body-worn cameras. We were operating out of the Moscow Police Department Ford Fusion, which I drove throughout the entire detail. This particular department vehicle did not have a dash camera or any other recording device. My street time conducting the plainclothes detail concluded at 03:52 hours on November 13th, 2022. During this detail, Officer Rosendahl and I made several patrols through the area of King Street and Queen Road. Okay, now let's stop right here. Before the body cam footage, which was timed around 2:52 a.m., that unmarked cruiser was driving around on Queen Road. Now we know the address of the home is King Road, but technically it's Queen Road, so we'll use that street. You all do realize that this vehicle would have to circle around Queen Road apartments to fully monitor the area, checking for minors in possession and consumption of alcohol, along with other alcohol and drug offenses. Ah, yes, that Linda Lane surveillance. During each patrol of the area, we traveled on the north side of 500 Queen Road, heading east. We wrapped around the building, heading south on the east side, then west on the south side of the complex. We then traveled north on the west side, turned west onto Queen Road, and proceeded to King Street. During one of the patrols in this area, while approaching the southwest corner of 500 Queen Road, I recall seeing a darker colored vehicle with taillights on. This vehicle was parked facing south on the south side of the parking lot, towards the west end. There was a short section of the parking lot which extended to the west of 500 Queen Road, south of 1122 King Street, which was where the vehicle was. Interesting, don't you think? Tesdall spotted a dark-colored vehicle with its taillights on. Bonnie was driving a black Toyota Corolla in her DUI arrest. The audio alleged to be fake from next door has a male calling Bonnie, telling her to get over there as attacks were heard in the background. And around 2:20 a.m., we hear a male call Ethan's name. We hear a female yell out, OMG. There's commotion, there's panicking. Clearly something violent had occurred. But let's find out if Tesdall spotted any of this activity, shall we? Quote, each time we patrolled this area, I drove the same route. During the final patrol, which to the best of my recollection was between 0200 and 0300 hours on November 13th, 2022, as we traveled north on the west side of the apartment complex, I saw several individuals approaching the residence at 1122 King Street. During this detail, I was looking for alcoholic beverages, open alcoholic containers, and individuals who appeared to be intoxicated. I observed the individuals as I drove past them, but did not see any reason to contact them for our related patrol. I recall my view of the individuals being obstructed by vehicles and brush on the east side of the parking lot for 1122 King Street. The individuals were walking close to a vehicle which was parked in the northeast corner of the lot. As I turned onto Queen Road and traveled west, I continued to view the individuals. From my recollection, there were at least 2 individuals, possibly 3. I recall one of the individuals having blonde hair. I do not recall exactly how many individuals there were, what they were wearing, or any other details as I quickly looked for beverages in their hands and whether they were staggering from intoxication. Since we made several patrols through the area, I cannot say with 100% confidence I saw the vehicle on the same pass as I saw the individuals. Upon review of my radio history, I contacted 3 individuals at Taylor Avenue at about 2:55 a.m. To the best of my recollection, this was after exiting King Street after seeing the individuals at 1122 King Street. We cleared this contact at 03:32 hours, unquote. Now, this setting appears to be Kaylee and Madison arriving back home, right? But if it was Kaylee and Madison, surely the officer would spot the gray sweater Kaylee had on. It would stand out visually, even if you were not focused on them specifically. You knew one had blonde hair, so just common observation, Kaylee's gray sweater would stand out as well. You see, the reason he didn't mention observing one of the individuals with the gray sweater on is to avoid the setting of seeing the victims prior to the murders. It's not an admission of guilt if he did observe them, but guilt itself makes one stay far away from any acknowledgement. The time frame he provided was 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. of patrolling the area, because the vehicle was on Taylor Avenue at 2:52 a.m., and we don't know exactly what time it arrived there.
In addition, Madison was clearly drunk. Surely she was staggering a bit. Not only was Kaylee's sweater highly visible, but she had on light blue jeans, which would also be highly visible. If it were Kaylee and Madison, Officer Tesdall spotted. Now, there are a few visual points in that body cam footage. We spotted a white vehicle, or light silver, driving on Taylor Avenue at 2:58 a.m. Some believe this was Kohberger's Elantra. Then there was a black truck traveling on Taylor Avenue around 3 a.m., which some believe was the same truck Dylan took a photo with. Now, based on the sound of the truck before it's spotted, it sounds like it's coming from the neighborhood. This could be the darker colored vehicle that Tesdall spotted with its taillights on. But soon after both vehicles were spotted, about 4 to 5 individuals are spotted running away from the neighborhood. There's a walkway in between the apartments and the homes. This is where they were running through. Then about 10 seconds later, we hear a high-pitched sound that some assumed was a scream. And after going back to that body cam footage, that did sound like a scream. And this would be the scream heard by individuals that night. This was at 3:12 a.m. At 3:06 a.m., Murphy was heard howling. Some claim there's no way to know if it was Murphy. Well, according to neighbors, that apparently was the only dog in the neighborhood. Seems unlikely, but hey, it's possible.
Let's think about the time frame and layout of the area. Now, we will exclude the alleged Kohberger's travels in the neighborhood. Instead, we will focus on all of the other activity within the time frame the housemates arrived and when they allegedly settle into the home. We created an active reference for each time frame that's associated with each color. Take some time to review it if you like, but we want to focus on Queen Road Apartments, specifically in the rear parking lot area. Now, the colored radius points are where there is audio heard during the time frame attacks were more than likely occurring. If the surviving housemates claimed Xana and Ethan hadn't arrived back home yet, and the audio from Linda Lane indicates Ethan was attacked, then, well, they weren't at home. But also, this changes the dynamic in the home, meaning there's no way anyone was upstairs in Kaylee's room dancing and laughing while Ethan was being beaten, unless nobody told them. I guess that's possible. Nevertheless, the MPD school car, which is a Ford Fusion silver sedan, was patrolling the area from 2 a.m. to approximately 3 a.m., but it was more closer to about 2:45 to 2:50 a.m. Murphy is heard howling, yes, he was howling, at 3:06 a.m. At 3:12 a.m., there is a group of individuals running from Queen Road, and it's possible they witnessed Ethan being beaten in the rear of Queen Road Apartments and ran off, or even took his body back to the home and then ran off. They clearly witnessed something or were even involved in something. Seconds later, there is what sounded like a scream. This scream could have been seeing Ethan's beaten body dumped off, guess where? In the hall right outside of Xana's bedroom. We presented this theory in an episode in the past, that Ethan was beaten, perhaps beaten unconscious, his body was then taken back to the home and just dumped near Xana's room, as the individuals just wanted to get out of there as quick as possible, which would be the group spotted running away from that area around 3:12 a.m. Seconds later, of course, a scream is heard. But the main point is the activity of the unmarked cruiser. If the vehicle had circled the neighborhood, then it drove behind Queen Road Apartments, and it would definitely drive up on what was a physical altercation. There's no way around it because if the vehicle arrived on Taylor Avenue around 2:52 a.m., then the previous location was in the neighborhood. You see? Wait, let's go over this slowly. Let's crunch the numbers a bit here. Quote, during this detail, Officer Rosendahl and I made several patrols through the area of King Street and Queen Road. During each patrol of the area, we traveled on the north side of 500 Queen Road, heading east. We wrapped around the building heading south on the east side, then west on the south side of the complex. We then traveled north on the west side, turned west onto Queen Road, and proceeded to King Street. Okay, so just to be clear here, Tesdahl claims he and Rosendahl are driving the Ford Fusion around Queen Road Apartments. Keep this in mind because it's extremely important. During one of the patrols in this area, while approaching the southwest corner of 500 Queen Road, I recall seeing a darker colored vehicle with tail lights on. This vehicle was parked facing south on the south side of the parking lot towards the west end. There was a short section of the parking lot which extended to the west of 500 Queen Road, south of 1122 King Street, which was where the vehicle was. Each time we patrolled this area, I drove the same route. During the final patrol, which, to the best of my recollection, was between 200 and 300 hours on November 13th, 2022, as we traveled north on the west side of the apartment complex, I saw several individuals approaching the residence at 1122 King Street. During this detail, I was looking for alcoholic beverages, open alcoholic containers, and individuals who appeared to be intoxicated. I observed the individuals as I drove past, but did not see any reason to contact them for our related patrol. I recall my view of the individuals being obstructed by vehicles and brush on the east side of the parking lot for 1122 King Street. We stop again here. Tesdahl claims, in the best of his recollection, the final patrol in the neighborhood was between 2 and 3 a.m., and he observed several individuals approaching the victim's home. Okay. Quote, the individuals were walking close a vehicle which was parked in the northeast corner of the lot. As I turned onto Queen Road and traveled west, I continued to view the individuals. From my recollection, there were at least 2 individuals, possibly 3. I recall one of the individuals having blonde hair. I do not recall exactly how many individuals there were, what they were wearing, or any other details as I quickly looked for beverages in their hands and whether they were staggering from intoxication. Since we made several patrols through the area, I cannot say with 100% confidence I saw the vehicle on the same pass as I saw the individuals. Upon review of my radio history, I contacted 3 individuals at Taylor Avenue about 0255 a.m. To the best of my recollection, this was after exiting King Street after seeing the individuals at 1122 King Street. We cleared this contact at 3:32 hours. Unfucking quote. Now, crunching the numbers here, Tesdahl had patrolled the neighborhood from 2 a.m. to approximately 3 a.m., which he stated was about 2:55 a.m., when they had entered onto Taylor Avenue. Technically, the body cam footage starts off around 2:52 a.m., but it's fine. What does this mean, you ask? Well, the problem here is we don't see a vehicle circling Queen Road Apartments in the time frame that Tesdahl claimed they were patrolling the neighborhood, including circling Queen Road Apartments. Around 1 a.m., there is a vehicle's headlights or taillights on in the lower left-hand corner, which would be near the rear parking lot of the apartments. The next vehicle spotted is around 2:48 a.m. I repeat, 2:48 a.m. Then, the vehicle that is alleged to be Koberger's is spotted around 3:31 a.m. Now keep in mind, Tesdahl stated, quote, we cleared this contact at 3:32 a.m., and the citations ended approximately around 3:15 a.m., right? So if they cleared the contact around 3:32 a.m., is it possible that they circled the neighborhood one last time before leaving the area? It's likely. If they were patrolling the area and had circled Queen Road Apartments several times, where are they in the Linda Lane surveillance approximately from 2 a.m. to 2:50-ish? Because they exited the neighborhood around 2:50 a.m. and parked on the curb of Taylor Avenue, right? Now, if the vehicle spotted at 2:48 a.m. was in fact the unmarked cruiser, are we to believe that it was unfortunate that they didn't hear or spot the physical altercation involving Ethan? We all hear someone calling his name. In fact, several videos that have the audio enhanced, you hear even more dialogue during that time frame. Shout out to Sonia D, who had uploaded an enhanced version of the footage from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. It was from 2 years ago, but everyone who hasn't examined the audio in depth should go check it out. There are others, but that's the one we recently re-examined. Around 2:15 a.m. is when it appears there is a group of individuals either in the alleyway of the apartments or in the rear parking lot to the left. There is an individual heard running around 2:19 a.m. At 2:20 a.m., it sounds like there are individuals running in one of the units upstairs. Perhaps not the units next to the camera, but it surely sounds like someone is running somewhere. A female is heard yelling, "No," which was in a pleading tone. A male can be heard vaguely or cautiously saying Ethan's name. He continues to say his name, and it definitely sounds like he's pleading, like, "Please, Ethan, get up," or he witnessed Ethan in a horrible condition. Then, the most alarming moment is a female is heard yelling out, "OMG," and of course, the male then yells out Ethan's name a bit louder. Now, everyone has heard this audio. It doesn't take much investigating here to know that Ethan had been harmed in some manner, even deceased, because the female yells out OMG, which is reacting to something horrible. The male then yells out Ethan's name. I mean, come on, clearly Ethan was attacked. Keep in mind, this is around 2:20 a.m., and Moscow PD has to be somewhere in the neighborhood at this point. From that point until 2:48 a.m., there are vehicles heard driving in different directions, car doors closing, among other activity. The problem, as mentioned, is the next vehicle spotted is at 2:48 a.m. We have to assume this is the unmarked cruiser circling Queen Road Apartments. From there, they exit onto Taylor Avenue, and that's where the body cam footage picks up. Yet Tesdall stated that they concluded the contact at 3:32 a.m. And there was a vehicle spotted circling Queen Road Apartments around 3:31 a.m. So the problem is we don't have any footage from the neighbor security camera prior to when the alleged Kohberger enters the neighborhood. We could determine a lot if it was released. Here's another thing to ponder. Wouldn't they see the white Hyundai Elantra? Well, according to these police reports, there is no mention of spotting a white vehicle driving around in the area, or specifically the neighborhood. But they mentioned a darker colored vehicle with taillights on. Surely they spotted the vehicle. It's a light bulb at night. It stands out. Even in retrospect, one of them would recall seeing a white sedan driving. Heck, the one that passed them around 2:58 a.m., they didn't mention that vehicle. Maybe it's because the white vehicle, or light-colored vehicle, is not a Hyundai Elantra. Or better yet, not Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra. Can anyone say Eugene, Oregon? Yup. I think Moscow PD may have blood on their hands, my friends, or allowed it to happen. Well, from law enforcement's perspective, they still have blood on their hands.
Where is all of this connected, you ask? Well, Kaylee had a friend who had a badge. This was a theory that was presented, and it's definitely not irrational, considering her peers claimed she was seeing other guys after breaking up with Jack. Katie stated she was hooking up with other guys after Jack, so much for both families claiming they were planning on getting back together. Not sure how that was going to work when Kaylee was planning on moving to Texas and with the male roommate. Quote, Detective Dean asked if Kaylee or Madison had a boyfriend or ex-boyfriend. Katie said Kaylee dated a guy named Jack for a couple of years, and Kaylee and Jack were high school sweethearts. Katie said that Jack was a really nice person. Katie said that she spoke to Kaylee a couple of days before the incident, and Kaylee said that once she graduated, she was looking for an apartment in Texas. Katie said Kaylee met a guy from Texas that is already living in Texas, and that they were going to be roommates.
I asked Katie if Kaylee and Jack were still together when Kaylee mentioned that to her, and Katie said no, that they were already broken up. Katie said that Jack mentioned that Kaylee attempted to call Jack around 3 a.m. asking if he was up. Katie said that she didn't think Jack replied to Kaylee because he thought it was some type of booty call. Detective Dean asked how they knew that Kaylee had attempted to reach out to Jack, and Katie said because Jack told them. Katie said she thought they found out after people were asking Jack if he knew anything about what happened. Okay, let's stop right here. Katie stated that she thought, yes, she thought that Jack didn't answer Kaylee because it was a booty call. It doesn't say that's what Jack told her. But later on, clarifying how she knew that Kaylee called Jack, she says Jack told her. So what this appears to be is Katie trying to justify the reason Jack didn't answer. Yet Jack himself claimed he was asleep during that time frame. Isn't this what he told you, Katie? So if he told you he was asleep to where he didn't even know she was calling, why would you assume Jack didn't answer because he thought Kaylee was trying to hook up? You see, this is an indication that Katie knew that Jack knew or was even involved. Why would she claim he thought Kaylee was trying to hook up if he wasn't even awake during those calls? Because he was awake and ignored her calls. Once again, Katie just keeps spilling the beans under pressure. Let's continue though. She goes on. When asked if the roommates had any issues, Katie stated she was not aware of any issues between the roommates. Well, let's be honest. If you claim that Kaylee did cocaine and you knew for a fact that Xana did cocaine, I'm pretty sure some issues would arise. Maybe not to the point there's major problems, but money is always an issue with a drug addiction. Nevertheless, quote, I asked if Kaylee hung out with other males. Katie said Kaylee was talking to a guy named such and such who was a member of blank fraternity. Katie said they had a sexual relationship and would hook up here and there. Wow, Katie knows everything, doesn't she? She goes on to describe the male being over 6 feet tall, brunette and medium build, and served as vice president of such and such fraternity. Now, if anyone knows who this individual is, feel free to share. Okay, if we look at the theory that Kaylee was dating an officer, it would definitely align with them being the private driver that night. In addition, if Kaylee was in fact doing cocaine and was dating a police officer, well, now it really gets deep. Because a crooked officer gets their dirty hands on drugs quite easily from drug dealers. Yup. Who knows? Maybe that officer got Kaylee to do it, or heck, maybe Kaylee introduced it to him. Again, we have to stress the point. This is not slander. Katie, a friend of Kaylee, stated this. She is the one who told law enforcement Kaylee did cocaine along with her housemate, Xana. For her to make this statement, she would have either heard about it or even seen it personally. So hold Katie accountable for revealing this information. The chaos is just thinking about the environment based on what she revealed. The way it's depicted by Katie is Kaylee was seeing multiple guys at different times. No offense, of course, but if Kaylee was dating a police officer, Showalter claims a silver sedan picked them up, and Moscow PD had an unmarked cruiser slated the, quote, school car that was also a silver sedan. I mean, come on. Why wouldn't she get a ride from her boyfriend who was also a police officer? Wouldn't have to pay for it neither. And then there's more. That Moscow PD school car did not, I repeat, did not have a dash cam or any other recording device. So he could use the vehicle like a, get this, private driver. He could keep that a secret because we wouldn't see that activity unless he had his body cam recording, and we know that wasn't going to happen. Many claim that the vehicle that dropped Kaylee and Madison off back home was seen on the other surveillance camera on Linda Lane facing Taylor Avenue around 150-ish. Well, do you see that vehicle entering the neighborhood? No, you don't. And this is what makes it a bit tricky, because Tesdall stated he worked an overtime shift, yes, overtime shift, starting around 9 p.m. He also stated the so-called patrolling in that neighborhood was from 2 a.m. to around 3 a.m. Then they leave the neighborhood around 3:30 a.m. Well, he could have easily picked Kaylee and Madison up around 1:45 a.m., got back to the neighborhood around 1:56 a.m., and then proceeded to so-called patrol. But was he actually patrolling? Because we know there was violence occurring somewhere near the rear of the victim's home. In Queen Road Apartments, that parking lot in the back is where the violence was taking place. Surely a police officer driving around Queen Road Apartments around this same time frame would have spotted something or heard something. He has to travel to the back parking lot to make the circle around. What do you guys think? Do you think the silver sedan that picked the girls up is the same silver sedan Moscow PD used that night, which is slated the, quote, school car? Eric Goer may have been used as the scapegoat to cover up Kaylee's relationship with a police officer. And that, my friends, opens up a whole new can of maggots.
I would go out on a limb and suggest that this officer, who would have been dating Kaylee, wouldn't want that to get out because he would be too close for comfort in this case. Dropped the girls off and proceeded to drive around in the neighborhood. Obviously, violence had unfolded in the back parking lot of Queen Road Apartments from 2 a.m. and on, which he was so-called patrolling from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. And a scream is possibly heard around 3:12 a.m., which was soon after Kaylee tried to contact Jack. We know Moscow PD covered up the murders, but if Kaylee was dating law enforcement, then this has to be connected to those murders, in our opinion. Did anyone know that the unmarked cruiser had been circling in the neighborhood prior to these police reports being unsealed? Nope, because the chaos would have been all over it if it was publicly released. Now you see why the judge sealed it, because there is suspicions surrounding this private driver. This MPD school car. This unmarked cruiser that's the same description as the vehicle that picked Kaylee and Madison up. They cleared individuals, but as Christy stated, they cleared individuals too fast. Remember, she stated she thought it was someone they knew. Why? Because she perhaps thought about individuals who had the access code to the home? Oh, but the suspect entered through the sliding doors. Well, how do we know that for a fact? Because Dylan claimed to see this? Right. We know that a suspect traveled downstairs to the first floor. The blood DNA of a male proved it, so obviously there's multiple suspects. Now, someone left a comment and suggested that it was a taser used on Ethan to subdue him that Bethany heard and saw from underneath her door. It's possible because the electric charge does sound like a firecracker, or at least this is what Bethany would assume it was based on the sound effect. And the light flashed underneath her door. That would be the visual effect of that electric charge. If it was a taser, who had a taser? We know who definitely has tasers. It's possible. Yet we keep pointing out the facts, hopefully to get as close to the truth as possible. Fact: Dylan and Bethany were aware of the attacks and the murders. It doesn't matter who heard and saw what first. It doesn't matter who was involved at this point. We're agitated with the fuckery now. Fact: the MPD school car was physically driving around Queen Road Apartments during a time frame where violence had unfolded. Fact: a male left blood on the bridging stairs heading down to the first floor. This is a suspect, and that's a fact. These three facts are the foundation. A strong opinion is that the silver sedan Showalter claims picked Kaylee and Madison up is the same silver sedan used by Moscow PD that night, which was in the neighborhood prior to what was released in the body cam footage. Without a dash cam or any other form of recording in that unmarked cruiser, the vehicle would seem very discreet circling Queen Road Apartments. Don't you think? Anywho, there are suspects right under our noses. We just have to sift through those police reports. Might not have the patience, but we'll try. Payne might give us a lead. He claims someone's apartment had dried blood all over, and they stayed right down the street. Sheesh, might be one of the males in the home they're protecting, hey? This is the Chaos Sector.